This is Rolf Youngclass, and I'm speaking out in the September 1st, 2010 edition of the Haskell County Monitor Chief, Sublette, Kansas. In his Gettysburg Address, President Lincoln said, "It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth." These days, those words seem to apply to a distant land or a time long ago. The term representative government is becoming an oxymoron in many respects, particularly at a federal level. Representative government. Let's take a look at those words and see how they have been redefined. Today it would seem that many of our elected officials think representative means co-opting the desires of the electorate to further a personal agenda. Supposedly representing the desires of the people, they are really looking for the lowest common denominator, playing to people's ignorance and getting them to accept lies at face value. Say whatever you want, because anything goes if you can get enough people to believe it. As a result of this warped idea of representation, government is then redefined as the use of taxpayers' income to create legislation that ensures the legislators' support by the populace. Bribery, if you will. As the Temptations sing in Ball of Confusion, "Vote for me, I'll set you free." More and more legislation is passed, which eventually leads to a minority of the people funding programs where the majority who don't pay taxes can get something that costs them nothing. Our nation is rapidly heading in that direction. What has happened to this country where our president uses one of the states, Arizona, as an example to the international community of how this nation is violating human rights, when that state is actually attempting to bring control to a border situation that is veering out of control? Once again, pursuing a political agenda, Trump's dealing with a crisis and coming to the rescue of one of the states that is part of this nation, the United States. If a law that mirrors the federal laws is supposed to be unconstitutional, why is that singled out as a human rights violator? The rhetoric doesn't match up with the reality once again. Nothing in the lawsuit about violation of rights, yet that is what the President and the Attorney General say the problem is. Our President appears to be so caught up in his ideological agenda that he always ends up siding with America's enemies against the American people. Doesn't he realize that asking someone for their proof of citizenship in the normal process of law enforcement is a far cry from the horrendous human rights violations going on in other countries around the world? It's time to return to the mission that Abraham Lincoln set before this nation 157 years ago, that we be dedicated to the task of seeing that government of the people, by the people, and for the people not perish from the earth. We've been duped long enough. Let's stand up for what is good about this country and reject this wholesale dismissal of our nation's wonderful heritage.